I'm Kate. I'm your new pastry chef here at the U Club. Thank you for picking up these cookie kits so that you can work along with us in decorating to make these fun holiday designs. Today I'm going to show you how to make a variety of cookies, and your kit will include all the things to complete these looks or to mix it up a little bit and do what your household wants you to have fun and decorate to your abilities. So in your kit, you're going to have sprinkles and eyeballs to add to your decorations. You'll have a variety of Halloween shaped cookies to do these designs. We're also going to provide to you dishes of each of your colors of icing and additional piping bag to make it easier for you to add these decorations to the cookies. Some things you might want to have on hand are a pair of scissors to cut the tips of the piping bags, some wet towels, and if you don't have an icing spatula, you can use either a regular butter knife, the back of the knife, or you can even use the bottom of a spoon to spread the icing. The icings are all consistency based on the temperature. So before you use an icing, you're going to want to microwave for 20 to 30 seconds, probably 30 seconds on your dishes of icing for using the spatula and frosting, and maybe closer to 10-15 seconds on your piping bags before you use them so that they're the right consistency to flow out for you. One thing that's very important to know about using the piping bags is that they will come to you with no cut on the bag, so you'll want to cut the tip off in rather a small little portion cut off. I always recommend starting by trimming just a little bit, and if you need to go back and trim it to have a little bit wider hole, go back and do that, but obviously once it's trimmed, it's the size of piping you're gonna have. All right, so we're gonna get started, and the first cookie that we're gonna get started on is our Frankenstein. We're gonna go all the way through each cookie and start with just the base that goes on the bottom, and then we'll come back with the piping to add the decorations that go on top. So, that's probably enough. All right, so we're gonna get started and doing this Frankenstein design. One of the things you wanna look for after you've heated your icing is the consistency. All you're gonna do is heat it for, I did these for about 20 seconds and stir it up so you have it pretty smooth. You're looking for it to be runny enough for you to spatula on there, but not so thick that it's hard to spread. This icing is, again, consistency based on the temperature, so this is just about right. And when you're using your knife or palette, these are available all over the place, most grocery stores even, you're gonna practice taking just a small amount towards the tip of the knife or the spatula you're working with and spread it a little bit. And then you want to look to try and push that bead of icing, and that's the neatest way you can get it to the edges. So you move that around, come back. Really you're working with just the tip of the spatula. When you're working with icing all the way down the edge of the spatula here, you're more than likely gonna spread icing in an area you might not want, and you certainly don't need to scoop all of your icing for the cookie at once. You can go back and add a little bit. So we're gonna start with our basic green outline on this cookie, and we're gonna continue down our designs, putting just our base icing on. So, our Frankenstein has its green base. We're now gonna go to our skull, which is gonna obviously have a white base to it. So move this down, and this is the one we'll be working on. This is a very basic skull, but you could also decorate it up in the theme of the sugar skulls, Dia de los Muertos, any design you want. You can make it friendly with a little smile, or you can make it a menacing skeleton. So again, I'll take my warmed icing, stir it up just so it's a good consistency for me to spread on there. And again, you'll kind of wipe that clean, and you're working more from the top of the spatula. So in pushing that bead, you want to spread it a little bit till you have it controlled right at the edge. And certainly it doesn't have to be neat, but that's how, when you're spreading icing, you're gonna be able to control it a little better. You're gonna work with that little bead, pushing it right towards the edge, and you'll get a nice clean line. You can take your time, you can scrape it off and start again, There's really no way to mess it up. And if you do go off the edges, keep in mind that on all of these designs, you could put a little edge and border with your piping, and that also helps neaten it up because you're running that line right down the edge of the cookie. So, on this cookie, we're gonna go ahead and set this aside to have its piping on there. Now, you can either add your little eyeballs on your Frankenstein. Once it's set for a moment, it might be easier so you don't get icing on your fingers, but you can certainly add them as you go. Once the icing's firmed up, they may not stick as well, but I'm gonna go ahead and add them now that it has set just a little bit. Now, I like my Frankenstein eyes to be a little close together. So if this is where the hair is gonna be, and this is the mouth, I'm gonna put them about halfway in there and press them right in. Okay, this icing is soft enough to work with. It sets pretty quickly though, so especially if you have little ones that are interested in eating them right away, they'll be set for you in just a few minutes. But considering that, you also want to make sure you don't work with the icing for too long without reheating it. Now that we have the white out, we're going to move on to the mummy as well, and we're going to do the base on the mummy. So again, it helps to wipe your knife or your spatula. Whenever you're working with any kind of icing, similar to art, you don't want to struggle with the medium that you're working with. So having it the right consistency for you is going to make it so much easier. If you go to do your icing and it feels really runny, just let it sit for a moment, stir it up, and continue. If it's a little thick like this, you could heat it a little more. I'm gonna keep working with it, but you can see that as I've worked with it already, it is beginning to set and get firmer. I think that gives the mummy a little bit more texture as we're gonna go through and give him his bandages anyhow. And you're just gonna work to push that bead and spread it as even as you can. Sometimes you'll get something a little smoother, sometimes you'll have a little bit of a bumpy finish, but that's just fine. As you become more skilled at this, you can keep your icing warmer and runnier and get a smoother finish. So now I'm going to move along to the pumpkin, which you can also do in many different ways. Oh, we're going to get our eyes on our mummy here. So you'll have plenty of these eyeballs to work with, so that way if you decide to design your own cookie, you can make a monster, you can do anything you want with these eyeballs. They're fun for Halloween. So we'll get those on there before the icing sets. All right, so we'll move along to our pumpkin and go to our orange icing. Just wiping this off on a damp towel. So stir this up, make sure I got a pretty good consistency. It's getting a little thicker, but it's gonna be just fine. So kind of a clean spatula, pulling up a little bead. It also helps to hold the cookie in your hand. A lot of times people try and keep control by keeping it on the counter. I find it's a lot easier to hold the cookie by the edges so you can turn as you're working and you can keep your spatula in the same direction instead of having to turn it around while it's on the table. So on the pumpkin, we're just gonna ice the bottom part, that would be orange, and we'll be using green to pipe the stem at the top. There we go. So just a basic, almost a circle on there. And so then that one will set to add the additional piping. Now we've got purple and black coming up on the spider base and the bat. The icing with the black coloring in it obviously is going to be stronger. Working with it, you usually want to keep things pretty minimal. Nobody wants a big mouthful of black icing, but that being said, it's not going to dye your mouth or anything. The black icing is going to run a little thinner than the other ones because of the amount of pigment that it requires to get that deeper, darker color in there. When you first get it, it might look a little violet or gray, but this icing as it sets is going to get a lot more black. So this one you'll notice has all the little details for the bat wings, and this is where the practice of using and pushing your bead of icing will be really helpful. So we'll start down here at the bottom, and get a little spread, and then you're gonna use just the little tip of your knife or your spatula to push just a little bit right onto each of those bumps. Spreading up a little bit till you get all those done. And now I'm gonna turn and do the same thing on the top for the wings and the ears. And again, work with just a little bit. It'll help you. It won't go sliding off your cookie or anything. Get right up into there in his ears. And this one will have an outline as well, so it'll be nice to help clean up the edges if you feel like they're not as neat as you'd hoped. So on the bat, before the icing sets, I like to add a little detail to this since a bat is pretty simple and just black. So you'll have some of these black Jimmy sprinkles. And so what you can do with this is dip it right in the side, just up the side of the wing, and they'll stick right on there. Same here before it's set. And it just gives it a little extra detail. You also could use the Jimmies when we put the hair on the Frankenstein. That can look kind of cool, or you could sprinkle them onto your spider. But you'll want to put the Jimmies on the eyeballs as well while the base icing is wet. That will help it stick. Otherwise, you can always go back and pipe a little frosting where you want to stick down your decorations. So now we're going to do the purple base for our spider, just to get all those nice fall colors in there, Halloween colors. So I'm going to go ahead and actually switch out since this one had black icing. All right. It's okay if you get these little crusty bits after you've frosted. It's ideal to heat these one at a time as you use them so it doesn't firm up like that. But generally, it's not going to affect the flavor. You might see a little bump on your cookie, but for home cookies with it not being royal icing, it's always going to have a little texture. This icing in particular is somewhere between a buttercream and a royal icing. It's lower in fat than a buttercream icing, so that's how it's able to firm up when you heat it more, and it won't break and turn into an oily mess in the microwave. But that being said, it will stay somewhat soft when it's done. It won't be as crunchy as royal icing is. And like I said, especially for the kiddos, it sets up quickly enough that you can eat them without waiting to the next day. And it will stay somewhat soft for you. So we have the base on each of these cookies, and we're gonna go through and do the piping detail on each of them. So this is the spot where I'd recommend you go ahead and heat maybe one at a time your piping bags. You'll see that this one has a twist tie on there. These other ones that I'm working with do not. Keep in mind that when you heat your piping bags, they will be sent to you with the twist tie on them. As we know, metal can't go in the microwave, and I'd hate for somebody to have an accident. So please be sure to remove your twist tie before you microwave these bags. It's totally microwave safe, so you can put it in there. I'd recommend for these about 10 to 15 seconds, just enough to get it soft enough and runny enough for you to pipe it out, but not so much that it's gonna burn the sugar or be too warm to hold. So I'm gonna go ahead and heat these icings. All right, now that I have my piping bags formed up, you can see that they've got definitely a runnier texture to be able to flow out onto the cookie. We're gonna start with the black icing bag for our Frankenstein, and then you'll see that we're gonna be using it several times on other designs. So what we'll do is check the consistency. Like I said, the black icing has more pigment, so it's gonna tend to be runnier on its own. Just try it out, see if you get it. Here we go. Sometimes it also helps with these piping bags to squeeze it to the sides here from the seam to create a little bit better circle as opposed to a flat ribbon. And that will come in handy when we're piping our mummies, on which we do want sort of a flat piping. So on Frankenstein, you're gonna start kind of just above the line where his eyeballs are, and we're gonna start with just a border right around the top. So you can see as I'm holding my bag, to keep it from squeezing out of the top, you will have those twist ties which you can put back onto the bag if it helps. They won't be overly full, but you should never rely just on your tie. The proper technique for using a piping bag is actually to twist it at the top of where your icing is, and then squeeze that area between your thumb and your forefinger, right here in that little crease, so that you can squeeze from the top and guide really just with one finger is all it takes to get it in the right direction. So from here, we're gonna give him his little zigzaggy hairline. Can't mess that up. And then to fill in his hair, very simply give him that kind of tall hair look. Just fill this in back and forth, up and down. Go back and get that little spot. So you can see how much thinner this icing is just from being warmed back up, and also the black is runnier, so keep that in mind. On Frankenstein, I'm gonna give him a friendly face, but you can add decoration any way you choose. So this is where you might want to pull it a little flatter so that we can run a skinnier line in this direction for where his mouth is. Turn this a little bit to get your stitches, and you're just going to run that up and down carefully, and you want to lift off as you go, tap, pull over, and lift. We're going to give him a little scar right here to the side and do the same thing. Couple stitches. You can add little stitches all over the cookie or put them where you think looks nice. And then I like to make this Frankenstein look a little friendlier. So I'm going to squeeze a little bit out there, make sure I have good consistency. And we're going to give him a nose and some ears. So I'm going to give him a big old nose, and I'm going to part right on here some big old ears. And you're just going to squeeze from the top of your bag and use your other hand to guide. So that is your finished Frankenstein. Very simple. Now we have that black bag still out. It's a good consistency. So we're going to continue with our skeleton. There's a lot of ways to do this. We're going to keep it really simple, but keep in mind with the sugar skull design being really popular, you'll have plenty of colors to work with, and you can add additional details to it. But the basics of doing the skull are just where the placement of the eyes, nose, and mouth are. So we're gonna start with the mouth. I'm gonna give him a friendly kind of smile. So right down here, just past where his little cheekbones are, is where I'm gonna run this smile. Okay, and similar to Frankenstein, just the same, we're gonna give him little stitches here. When you go to place the eyes and the nose, anatomically, there's a correct kind of place it would fall on the skull. But basically, you want your nose, whoop, I'm dripping a little. You want your nose somewhere in between these two insets, which would be above the cheek. You start in the center, make yourself a little dot, but it's gonna be sort of an upside down V. You can give it a little bit more width at the bottom there if you want, just by squeezing a little more firmly, and that's your nose. For the eyes, you want them just a little bit above that. So what I do is start by first making myself some little dots so I can make sure they're in about the right spot. And these are gonna be mostly rounded, but with a little bit of triangular shape to match that of a skull. So I'm gonna go ahead and fill in around there. Take a look, they look pretty close. There you go. So that's a really simple skeleton. Make it a little different from this one here, and to show you what I meant about cleaning up the edges of a cookie, we can go through and just pipe a simple border with one of these bags. And if, for instance, you had icing that was off your cookie, that's giving you a really clear outline. So we'll start in one spot. When you ice like this, you don't want to drag the tip of your bag along the cookie. You can see here actually, if you drag it, you're gonna get a different kind of look and doesn't flow as nicely. But if you want a nice smooth line, keep it above your cookie a little bit and let it fall. So I'm gonna go around and do that for the border so you can see on this one. Keep it above just a little bit and go around slowly. You don't have to squeeze very hard. You're really just letting it fall into place and watching as you go. We're coming up to the end, so we're gonna overlap a little bit, stop squeezing, and just let it be done. So it's a good way to neaten up your edges if you need to. All right. move on to our pumpkin. For this one, we're gonna use the orange piping bag first. You can keep it just a striped outlined pumpkin with the green top, or you can go through and you can add a little bit of a face, which is what we're gonna do on this one. Same way as you carve a pumpkin, put whatever face on there you want. To get a good outline of detail, so it firmed up a little bit, but it'll be all right. You're gonna start with that basic outline, and this is gonna help give this cookie a little bit more depth so it doesn't just look like a flat orange cookie. So you go through and pipe this on. And then for your center, you're gonna start by making at the top a pointed oval that takes up almost a good third of the center of this cookie. In perspective, the farther around the pumpkin, the smaller these little lines will be. So from here, you wanna go about halfway in between, and then your final one will be halfway in between that. And that way it looks like it has some perspective of size. And see, you can tell from the consistency, I would probably wanna heat this up just a little more. It's not flowing out as cleanly. But there's our basic outline for the pumpkin. And this is where you could go back in and add on your face. I like my pumpkins to look friendly, as you can see, but I'll give this one a little bit of a zigzaggy mouth. So we'll go circle eyeballs right on here. I'll give him a triangle nose. And we'll give him a zigzaggy mouth. All right, so we're gonna set this one aside and we'll come back with piping the green top, and I'll show you a couple tricks for that. All right, oh, I never put my eyeballs on my bat. Let's put those on there. The icing will still be soft enough, I'll just have to press them in there. So we'll stick those right in. There we go. All right, so for the spider, this is another one. You could put some of the little chocolate jimmies on, give them a little hairy look, but I like to see the eyeballs popping out nice and clear. So we're gonna start by, I like it a little off center, but we're just gonna make a big oval or circle of where we want that spider to be. We'll go ahead and put our eyes on there. And you can space the eyeballs out or put them really close together. It creates different looks on each of them. So get those right on there. Sometimes look a little googly. And we're gonna add the string that he's coming down from and his legs. So we'll start here and bring his little thread down that he's come down from, and we'll give him 4 little legs on each side. This one will also have a border, a multicolor. You can do that on any of your cookies, but we'll come back to that to add those other border colors. Okay. Now we have our mummy, and what we're gonna be doing is just adding the extra mummy wrapping on there. The reason we wanna wait in between adding the base coat and doing the piping is so that they don't all run together. You'll have that already set, so these will stand up tall on top of your base icing. You may also, just like this, want a little space to squeeze your bags out and wipe the tip clean as you're working with it. Just like the spatula, working with a clean tool is gonna make things so much easier for you so you're not struggling against it. So these can go on pretty much anywhere you like. I like a couple on the face. And actually, as you can see, this bag has a bigger hole and it's got a flatter pinch to it. Instead of opening that up into a circle, I'm gonna work with that as best I can to keep these flat, looking like mummy wrapper. Just gonna add some stripes on there. Okay, give them a few more. Here we go. You can neaten his edges up a little bit. But he's very simple. There we go. So we'll set this one there. done. Now we're gonna go back and add the remaining details on the pumpkin, the bat, and the spider. So first we'll do the bat. We have this black we're gonna be using to make an outline and give him some little ears. Just because the bat is all one color, I like it to have a little piping on there because it gives it a little bit more detail and variation. So from here, you're just gonna hold at the top of the bag, tap it back and forth in your zigzag to help give it just a little bit more definition, even though it's tone on tone, same color. And I like to get his ears nice and pointy up here. Okay. You can, as I have on this one, I like to add a little nose or muzzle, gives it a little bit more detail. And then you can use your white piping bag to tap in just a little tiny bit onto that ear. If you get a little tall, you can knock that over. All right, so that keeps the bat really simple with a little bit more detail. We're gonna go back and add onto the pumpkin our green. This is getting a little set, which is great. When the green sets a little bit more, it'll make it easier to have this look zigzagged on top and not have it flow together. So from here, it's really just a zigzag up and down touching to give you that stem look. You could, as a variant, leave the face off and decide just to add some vine work. I'm gonna have both on this one. So from here, you just pipe down a couple little vines. And that can make it a little fancier of a pumpkin, even if you leave the face off. You could tap on a few little leaves and spots, decorate it up. And that's a really nice one also for a party or a table favor, face or not. It gives you a lot of options for that. So now finally, we're gonna go through and finish our spider with that fun border. Keep in mind that the color combinations are all fun Halloween colors, and so you can mix them up as you choose. For this one, we're gonna pipe the white border as a base to put those other colors on. So as you know, this white one is cut a little bit bigger. So I'm gonna go through and give it that nice smooth border. I'm gonna turn the cookie so it stays kind of flat. And we'll go through and add some other colors on there. I'm gonna go ahead and use the green and the orange just like I did. You can see they're setting a little bit more, but that's all right. We're just gonna pipe little dots. So I'm gonna space them out just a little bit so I can put that green in between. And all you're doing is setting it, squeezing a little bit and lifting off. This is one application when it gets thick that it's okay to put it right down onto that icing or touching the cookie. For the most part, it's set enough that you're not gonna be dragging anything off the cookie with you. We'll go ahead and do our little green in there. But this just gives you an idea also how with this icing, you can build up some texture. You can put different layers on there if you choose, add additional decoration if you have more of an advanced skill level, using it to create some designs of your own. So these are the cookies that you'll be getting to decorate with your kit. And I hope that you enjoy it, and I hope this has been helpful to give you some ideas on some of the cookies you can do. I appreciate your support very much as we're making positive changes with the bakery and adding new things for our members. These are going to be fun kits and programs that we can continue to do. We'll do more decorating classes. And in case you hadn't heard, our bakery is growing, and we'll be providing a new menu just for members to be able to make special orders for events or personal parties or just for a snack if you need something. So thanks for joining me, and it's nice to meet some of your members the last few events. Hopefully we'll see you at the drive-in, and talk to you soon.